All right, welcome to Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris. Look who's back, Mr. Michael Catalana.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
I just decided to take a couple of weeks off.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, don't worry. Jenna's the host.
Jenna's the host.
They're making fun of me tonight because I said I was the host of the show.
You are the host.
I am the host of the show.
She is.
I
She is the host.
don't know what's so funny.
Wearing her Phillies red dress for the Phillies to win tonight.
That's what Mike is convinced of. Dan Fetes, I'm Jenna Cottrell. I'm the host, in case you're wondering. We're going to be talking all about this Bills meeting with the Jets down at MetLife Stadium. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back for the start of the show.
Buffalo Plus, your interactive look at the week in football, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
All right, welcome on into Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris. Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes, I am Jenna Cottrell. We are getting you ready for this Bills divisional matchup against the Jets at MetLife Stadium, as the Bills now 6-1 on the season. Mike, they made some moves at the deadline. We'll talk all about it as we get ready. But where do you think this Bills team is? Where's the confidence level of this team?
Yeah, I think it still should be really high, right? 6-1, you said. Has it been perfect? No. I think the offense has some work to do, which is something we haven't really said very much. The defense has survived a lot of injuries. They've found a way to win. The one blemish on the record is a Dolphins loss, which is an AFC East loss. And when you look back at the schedule, you always look at those games as being more important, and they've got an important one this week.
Last week, what really stood out to me was the way that Sean McDermott talked after the game, that the standard is set to a certain level. We've always talked about on the show over the last 2 years of the goalposts have been moved back. Not only on Josh Allen, but this entire team. So to have a 10-point win and be disappointed is the new standard, that they didn't play that well. So that for me is you were able to win, able to refocus, and kind of treat it mentally like a loss to bounce back from, because they said they want to improve from their last game, and that wasn't the case last week.
I mean, the Bills practicing this week, and they even talked about the fact that, they didn't like the way they played after that game against the Packers. We saw that first half that was great, and then the Bills kind of stumbling along in the second half. But you see that right there, Buffalo 0-1 in the division. You talked about it, Mike, that loss earlier on in the AFC to the Dolphins. Just where is this team at mentally as they get ready? Because, look, the Jets, they should win this game. They're the better team, but it just means so much in the standings.
Absolutely it does. And I always refer to these, you guys have heard, they hear me say things multiple times. In hindsight.
And then more.
And then more. In hindsight, what's the game mean, right? It's great to beat the Rams on the opening day, but that's just one game against an NFC team. Division games matter more. And Josh Allen talked about that this week, knowing going into this game, they've lost their only division game. They need a win in Jersey to get to 1-1 in the AFC East.
Again, you got to win your division games. That's rule number one. Coach McDermott preaches winning at home and winning your division games. So something that we got to do. Obviously, I think we've only played one of them. But again, going into hostile environment, it's no easy task to play away, and it's no easy task to play in in division opponent at their place. So we got to put our best foot forward.
He loves the best foot forward.
Yes.
Josh usually gets that in.
Bonds at the end of the day.
I was about to say, at the end of the day as well. We can't forget about that one.
He says hostile environment, and I kind of think that's what we're going to see. I mean, the Jets are 5-3. Are they great? No. We're going to talk more about their team later, but it is a division game, and it's a team. It's a bit of, I'm going to say, a Jets Super Bowl coming into this game, right?
I feel like, not to jump in on you, Dan, but this Jets team has hope.
Yeah.
And that's something that we haven't really seen in some time.
He's having none of this.
No, I just say, hope's a dangerous thing to have, especially when you're not sure if you have a quarterback. So while I do believe it'll be hostile,
the
Bills have pretty much owned MetLife Stadium over the last 3 years. There will be plenty of Bills Mafia. So I don't know. They just played at Arrowhead. I think that is head and shoulders above arriving in Jersey.
I agree 100%. It's not that it's that difficult to play in, but you're going down to play a Jets team that has found a way to win 5 of their first 8 games.
Yeah.
They're usually looking up at 500 all the time.
Yes.
And for them, it's a big deal. And for the Bills, get the division taken care of. Jenna,
Yes.
how many times have we heard this?
Yeah.
Sean McDermott says it starts with the division, because it does.
It does.
You have to take care of the division. This keeps you a couple of games ahead of Miami because they've lost the tiebreaker at the moment to the Dolphins.
Absolutely. This game is circled because of the implications, not as much about the opponent. But talking about it this week at practice, there was a new face helping out this Bills team as the Bills making that trade for Nyheim Hines, the running back from Indy. Dan, we got to talk to him this week at practice. There he is, number 20, Zach Moss's old number, as Zach Moss being traded away as well as a conditional 6th-round pick. I mean, Hines, what do you see from him, and how could he help out this Bills offense?
He's speed and versatility, and those are two things that Brandon Beane is in love with. He talks about this week the fact that they looked at him coming out of college. They looked at him in the NFL Combine. They liked what they saw. They checked in on him back in 2020 before training camp. They checked in on, this was just like they did with Stephon Diggs. You're constantly keeping in touch, saying, hey, if that opportunity ever comes up, we're interested in this guy. I think he helps. I think he's a more ready version of what they hope James Cook will be.
Yeah.
I think he provides that burst. I think he'll provide a passing game, another dimension to the passing game, which is while James Cook is playing better as of late, probably coming off his best game, I still think that this move is more of a win now.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and Hines also talked
He didn't
about
talk,
how
and I was like, he always talks.
He did, and he talked about how he fits into this Bills offense.
I believe it's a perfect fit. I think, the offense is looking at it over the years. When my agent kind of told me, I watched some over film, I was like, I can see it. Quarterback who can run and gun. He makes plays when plays break down. I even like the run scheme. So they run their running backs inside, outside. So I thought it was a perfect fit. So I got to make it fit now.
And I love what Josh Allen had to say at practice.
Holy crap, he's fast. Well said, Josh. It doesn't get much better than that.
I think Dan made a really good point about him fitting in and James Cook.
Don't give him that.
This is not a negative against James Cook. He's a rookie. Here's the way I look at a guy that you bring in like Hines. He's been there. He's played. He's played in playoff games, including one against the Bills, where he made a few plays. So when you get into that playoff game against the Dolphins, against the Chiefs, who knows who they end up, the Titans, whoever they end up playing. And there's a moment in that game where you're calling that play. It's nice to have a veteran. We're not talking about a guy who's been around 15 years. It's his 5th year in the league.
Yeah.
But he is an accomplished pass catcher.
Yes.
He catches balls more like a wide receiver than a running back.
He's productive, as well as the fact that he is an experienced returner.
That to me is the other thing, too, is we always talked about Isaiah McKenzie or who would fill in that spot, and nobody's really taken the reins to it. Khalil Shakir's done okay.
Yeah.
He's been fine, but this gives you a little bit of a sense of fear in opposing teams to kick to him.
Not only fear, but the other way is you got to catch the ball on a punt. And I know that sounds so simplistic, but what did they do all the time? When there was any doubt, they put Micah Hyde back there.
And he's not.
Micah Hyde's not
the
playing.
punt catcher.
Yeah.
So Shakir's been pretty good at handling the football. That sounds easier than it is in an NFL game.
Especially when in Buffalo or wherever when it's not a dome. There's the added element of wind and all the things that go into that. And I think it gives Shakir the ability to kind of focus on just being a pass catcher.
Absolutely. So you got another guy. But Hines, to your point, he can make something happen in special teams. I think for what they gave up, nothing against Zach Moss personally, good guy.
Yeah.
He could someday catch on with somebody else. But it's an upgrade in the Bills roster for a relatively small cost.
Yeah, and it's a move at the deadline they made to continue to get better. We'll talk all about that. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, we're going to talk all about Trey White as he was back to practice and back to talking about what the last 11 months have been like as he rehabs his ACL. Hello, welcome back.
Some good comments.
Yeah, what do you got?
Dan, I have faith you won't say anything moronic tonight. Please don't prove me wrong.
Nip it in the bud.
That wasn't from Renee Fetes, was it?
No.
Wait, I loved that. I'm a big non-thinker.
I'm a big non-thinker.
Yeah,
Vince True just got here. Don't know what you guys are talking about, but Dan is wrong. So we're off to a good start. I appreciate everybody for commenting in. We appreciate it.
Wow. That is so funny.
That was in the same segment that they said that Mike gave me a compliment that I was right, and that I made a good point.
And by the way, we're going to talk about something else Dan was right about in a little while,
pump
too.
his tires up too much.
Well, they're not.
That's true.
Somebody help me out here.
They're slashing his tires on mine.
That is definitely a bit true.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we talk about Khalil Shakir and just what Nyheim Hines can add to this team. But, I heard some people being like, well, there's only one ball. And, that.
Don't worry about that.
I was going to say.
It's funny. In the old days, when they used to throw 25 passes in a game, seriously, it was different. Now, Josh is going to, on some games, he's going to throw 30, 35, 40 passes, depending on the game. There is plenty of footballs to go around. You're not handing it off 40 times. It's a different game, and Hines will catch the ball.
A couple comments in about Trey White, hoping that he returns to the field. We will talk about him coming up a little later in the show, so stick around for that.
Yeah, coming up.
That was a host move.
Next. Jenna's the host.
I'm so annoyed. What did I do? What did I do? All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris. There you see the Jets as they're practicing Zach Wilson there. The Jets 5-3 on the season. They've played pretty well so far. But Mike, a lot of questions around number 2 right there, Zach Wilson. What do you think about his play so far?
I got to tell you, I don't know how much patience they're going to have in New York. We've seen this around the NFL. Teams get to a point pretty quickly and make decisions on guys. And if you're Robert Saleh, the head coach, I'm not saying they're ready to dump him, but he didn't exactly say 100% that he's the quarterback the rest of the year. He just said, Zach Wilson is our quarterback.
Yeah.
They got Mike White as the backup. He's a journeyman. He played against the Bills last year. They destroyed him in the game. And then you have Joe Flacco. So it's not even as much about that. I don't know what he gives them, Dan, in the difference between the other two guys. But the Jets have made some really good moves for the all-around team. They've improved their defense.
Yeah.
And then you start saying, hey, fellas, we've got some receivers that can play. This quarterback better step up to what we need.
That's what's funny about winning, is it can shorten the leash on the development of a quarterback. Where all of a sudden the Jets think, hey, we might be a wild card team. Who gives us the best chance to win right now? And that may not be Zach Wilson. We saw what Joe Flacco did. Actually played pretty well, and you kind of know what you're getting with Joe Flacco. Zach Wilson is the wild card. He makes a lot of the big plays, but also has struggled and has made a lot of the boneheaded turnovers.
Where do you see, Mike? Where do you see some of his biggest struggles?
Well, you know what? Let's listen to Dan Leberfeld. He covers the team for Jets Confidential, and I asked him about what's the issue with the quarterback, Zach Wilson, that he's been watching since last season. Here's what he had to say.
A lot of young quarterbacks, I think he gets into panic mode. Where am I going to go? They don't want to go through their progressions. They want to go through the thing they're looking at. They don't want to turn their head. So I think that he needs to improve going through his progressions, and also completion percentage. Completion percentage is huge in the NFL, because if every other pass is hitting the ground, when you're lingering around 50%, it's hard to sustain drives. He was around 50% last week against New England, 20 of 41. Hard to sustain drives when every other pass is hitting the ground.
You can hear that entire interview with Dan on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. And Dan, when he talks about that percentage of completions, and analysts will say it is a decision-making thing, not an accuracy thing. It's where do I go with the football? He goes with that first read. You better believe Leslie Frazier, the Bills defense, knows that.
It's the fact that he doesn't feel comfortable with anything within the system. That's what it looks like. If you look at the other side, inside the division, and you look at what Tua is, and how comfortable and how confident he feels in his reads and his play designs, that's the exact opposite for Zach Wilson this year. He seems lost, confused, making those... Like I said, he had 21 incompletions. 21 of them were throwaways. Like this offense just isn't clicking, and they have some nice pieces. Breece Hall's out. The offensive line's banged up. But for the most part, Garrett Wilson is a solid wide receiver.
Yeah. It's been on Zach Wilson now without Breece Hall out there, and I think you've been seeing how much that's stressed him out, and maybe he's not ready for that. But we know the Bills' defense is going to be opportunistic against Zach Wilson this upcoming week. We also know that Trey White has been back to practice, as Trey, he tore his ACL last Thanksgiving. He's been back to practicing. He's been out of the red non-contact jersey. We got to talk to Trey this week about just what his experience has been like as he looks closer to his return. Almost a year after Trey White tore his ACL, the All-Pro corner met with reporters here in Orchard Park. Now, he has been practicing. He will likely be in the Bills' game day lineup soon. But White was candid about what his recovery has been like and how challenging the last 11 months have been.
The first few months, it was just very hard, very depressing time. Locked up in my basement. They had to come, guys from the facility had to come drag me out of there.
Yeah, Trey White admits this is his first time he's really dealt with a major injury, and recovering from tearing his ACL last Thanksgiving has been a process, both physical and mental.
Every day it's been tough times too. I have my days where it's just, it's kicking my ass, but I have more days where I'm kicking its ass. So,
White says he's had to rebuild his body from the ground up.
Some days you wake up and it's better than others, and I've been very cautious with it, just taking my time, just making sure it's right, so I won't have any setbacks.
So while Trey is taking it day by day, he says he still remains confident in his abilities.
People that that I care about, and that care about me, and just know the amount of work and effort and blood, and literally blood, sweat, and tears that I put into this rehab, they know. So. Coming back and performing well, it won't be a surprise.
You see all the reporters around him because we haven't talked to him so long, and Dan, we were there, and just the emotion you felt listening to him.
Yeah, he talked about perspective that he gained, that he's more than a football player, that he can give more to people than just knocking down a pass or intercepting a ball, that he wanted to do more with his life. And this is the first time he said in 20 years that he's been forced to sit down. He said it was always football, basketball, and track. And this was the first major injury he's had. That's why he talked about the dark days. But whenever Trey talks, I always feel like you should listen.
Yeah.
Going back to 2 years ago when they signed his extension and he had just the heartfelt Zoom call with all the reporters about how much it meant to him, it's hard not to root for a guy like Trey.
I also go back to your interview with him. And he talked at that time about helping the young players.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's quite a thing, but you play all the time. These young guys aren't on the field. Now the young guys are on the field, and he's the one coming back with them. But that was his thought even before he had the injury.
Yeah, that was last year. I asked him what motivated him, and he said it's not all pros, it's not the playoffs, it's not Pro Bowls, it's bringing other guys along with him to experience what he has.
Yeah, talk about a teammate.
Yeah. Yep.
And the players have even talked about that, what he's been, what he's meant to this team, and when he will be in the likely lineup. We'll talk about all that. Coming up after the break, though, we're also going to talk about OBJ and his possible arrival in Western New York. Another weapon for the Bills. We'll talk all about it coming up after the break. Hello.
Wow.
Welcome back.
A bunch of people going crazy for the Buffalo Plus merch hats.
They like the hats.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are wondering where they can get the hats.
So we're going to set something up initially.
Yeah.
We're going to give away some hats.
Yes.
We're still trying to figure out some of the logistics of that.
Yes.
So people can get in touch with us. We want to make sure, and we know we've had some loyal people. So we're going to work that out and get some of the hats out there, and then. Who knows, might have a pop-up store in Manhattan one day for Buffalo Plus. I mean, it is the only New York team, right?
Yeah, this is true.
But I mean, we like it. We like it. We got the hats.
And we always appreciate all the support. You know how much fun we have on the channel. And it's been a lot of fun to see it grow. Like authentically, like this has been really cool. We have a really great time. As the host, I can say that.
Well, as the person who, made all the. Oh, never mind. I can't say it was Jenna. I got to give you the credit.
I was to say. Well, this was my idea, but it took all of us to bring it to life.
Well, no, it wasn't all your idea.
What do you mean?
It was our idea.
Stop.
You see what we put up with all the time?
Oh my gosh.
Put her in the red dress and she
You
takes
guys just
over.
kept giggling at me all day today.
Giggling.
Yeah.
We don't giggle.
You just point,
smirk.
mock.
Yeah, that's it. Just sarcastic.
That's it.
Just mocking all the way
That's
through.
what we do.
But no, we appreciate all the kind words because we have a lot of fun, and we always appreciate just the feedback. And we're figuring out the merch situation, but I know that we'll figure it out because we have a lot of passionate fans.
We do.
All right, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris. Let's take a moment to talk about the injuries on this team. The Bills had the bye a couple weeks ago. It seemed like they were getting healthy with everything. But then if you want to take this and just kind of look at this, we can take this graphic full as well to kind of talk about, where this team is at and what it means as we get into it, because some of these names are a little concerning on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think as of Thursday, when you look at Von Miller just popping up on the screen saying ankle, I don't think it's anything major, but you never know. We'll see. And as you're watching this, Jordan Poyer not practicing, doesn't look good for him to play this week. We'll be updating on social media all week, right up on Sunday at the game. Those are the guys you're looking at. And Spencer Brown is limited. I don't think he's going to be playing.
Yeah, to me, it's Milano along with Von Miller. At practice on Wednesday, Von was working off to the side. He pretty much doesn't practice on Wednesdays. That's a very typical Sean McDermott veteran rest day. And he was going pretty hard. Like he looked like he was working off to the side with sleds and parachutes and all kinds of things. So I'm not overly concerned with him, but obviously the oblique is something that can linger with Matt Milano. So and he's a guy that's battled injuries before. Yeah, something to look out for. And we appreciate Your Medicine Sports Medicine for sponsoring that segment. Talking about these players, let's talk about a possible new Bills player coming up. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. We've talked so much about him. He's got a lot of friends on this Buffalo Bills team. Guys like Von Miller, as well as Trey White. I mean, Mike, the trade deadline is come and gone. Not that OBJ has something to do with that, but we know teams are in talks with him. How do you think the Bills approach this?
I think it's fascinating. You're talking about a big-name player who just won a Super Bowl, coming off a big injury. He's a free agent, and at that time, there's going to be many teams looking for help. Yeah. So it's a unique circumstance here to have him there. And Dan, Brandon Beane openly talking about OBJ and how much he likes him was really interesting.
And it was more of a serious question than just hey, Von's posting Instagram about OBJ, and he's like, well, Von's going to be a great GM someday. Like, this was he called him a heck of a talent, said that, obviously, if you have talent, he's going to take a look. Yeah. So it was more of a confirmation of that fact. Now, there are a bunch of other things that go into these trade deadline moves, and Brandon Beane on Wednesday opened up about the process and how that works.
There are times when things get put out there that the Buffalo Bills are after this player. Sometimes I'm not even aware, and I say that in the sense that a scout may have, we may have a scout and he's in charge of the Denver Broncos, and he may call his contact at that team and say, hey, is this guy even available? Should I even mention him? Should I not? Sometimes you never even hear back whether the guy's available or not, and then you read 2 days later that we went after him. I know you guys have a job to do, but sometimes when you hear we're involved. Now, again, on Christian McCaffrey, I did speak to the Panthers GM. Never made him an offer, but did stay in touch through the process, and ultimately it was going to be more than we were going to be able to do.
It's pretty interesting, Dan.
So,
just move over
what was
here.
that last part? I missed it.
It was the part where Brandon Beane confirmed that he did reach out to the Carolina Panthers, which is something that I reported back a couple weeks ago.
Dan reported it. The Bills said it did not happen, and that's fine. Teams will deny interest all the time at that time. They weren't happy that got out. That's fine. But it was obvious
it was a
that
factual report.
It was. They didn't make that deal. They made another deal. Dan was right.
I can't tell everyone behind the scenes how many times Dan has said he is right.
It was when that was said at Bills on Wednesday.
Dan thought,
that was where I thought that conversation was gonna go. Was not where I thought it went.
Yeah, and Brandon Beane's a pro's pro.
Oh,
he always is. Great
yeah.
general manager.
Yeah.
But at that moment, they weren't happy. Now they're happy. They got Nyheim Hines. And
I'm happy too.
They're moving on, and Dan's happy.
All right, we're moving on. We're moving on. All right, coming up, we're going to have our picks and predictions about this Bills game against the Jets. We'll have that after the break.
Dan is happy.
Dan's pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, I never had any doubt in my reporting. I wouldn't have put anything out there
that's very fair. Yeah.
We didn't have confirmed.
But we also understand that what we're doing is different than obviously what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's times they don't want stories out there.
Correct.
There's, as Bean even explained, sometimes it's not as cut and dried as, oh, I called him and he called
There's
me back.
There's a lot more gray area of, hey, is he available?
Or who reached out and who represented the team. So it can get a little squirrely sometimes. It's not always that.
Word.
Well, it is. It's not always as simple, but of course the Bills were, and many teams probably looked into
Honestly, it was a point of due diligence, I feel like.
Dan was right.
T-shirts.
Dan was right. We're going to skip over that. We didn't say that. We didn't see that.
It's nice to have one person in here cheering for me.
Okay, like you're not your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, no kidding. But what I'm saying is, in that case, our job is to get information.
Correct, yeah.
And Dan got that good information and put it out there.
Yeah.
But again, the teams, look, there are certain things that we could put out there.
Correct.
They could impact the team, and sometimes it could impact the team in a negative way, but that doesn't mean you don't report it.
Correct. Yeah. And the other thing, too, is we talked about it on the Buffalo Plus podcast that's over on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel more at length, but that some stories, reports get put out on purpose. That they may not be 100% factual, but there's somebody that is pushing a narrative or wants to get a message out.
Agents, teams, it happens all the time.
There's a lot that goes into it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris. The Bills looking ahead to this game against the Jets Sunday at MetLife. We'll get into our picks, but first you have a moment to talk about what our sponsor has to say.
You just said Connors and Ferris. Greg Connors, he joins us every week. He loves talking about this football team and what they can do. So I asked him about Bills and Jets and what he expects to see. Here's what Greg had to say.
This game for the Jets, this is the tipping point in their season. This is the tipping point, because if they can knock off the Bills, all of a sudden the season looking forward, it has a very different perspective than if they lose and then they're 5-4. I think the Jets defense is tough. I think the Jets defense is aggressive. I think their corners are tough, aggressive corners, which I like to see, being a former DB. So I don't think the Bills are going to put as many points on the board. I'm going to take the Bills at 27-13.
Problems at times when you look at this Jets team, where at some point the offense wears on a defense. And I think this could be one of those games. I really like the Bills in this one. Not looking ahead, but just the fact that it's another divisional game, that they're still looking for their first win in the division. So I got them pretty comfortably winning 31-13. Not too much of a sweat in this one. I just don't see enough of Zach Wilson moving the ball down the field to make this game close. Bills win big.
All right, I also have the Bills winning this game. I agree. I think that the fact that the Jets offense just doesn't have the firepower. We've seen Zach Wilson struggle in these situations. I mean, the Bills defense is a whole nother caliber. Talk about the Bills offense as well. We know that's a whole nother caliber for this team. I think the pressure's been on Zach Wilson, and he's just struggled with that. And that's something that not every second-year quarterback takes that gigantic leap that we talk about, that what Josh Allen was able to do. I have the Bills winning this one at 27-13, as Buffalo would move to 7-1 on the season.
Yeah, I think for a couple reasons the Bills come out ready to play in this one. One, it is a division game. You got to win those games. I mean, the Dolphins are good, and they're a couple games behind them too. So the Bills need a division win against the Jets to get to 1-1. And also, the way the Bills played in the second half of that Green Bay game almost feels like a loss. I know it wasn't. It was a 10-point win. So I have the Bills. Similar score to you guys. I got the Bills winning it 28-13. I think the Bills' defense really dominates the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Here's a look at all of our picks from the Buffalo Plus team, as we are all going once again Bills in this one, Week 9 of the season. And as always, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. We have so much fun on there, plenty of videos to get you set for this Jets game. We always appreciate all the support, but be sure to subscribe. We always love that. We appreciate it.
And comment and subscribe.
And subscribe. Double subscribe.
And then subscribe again.
All right, we're going to wrap up here. For Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes, I'm Jenna Cottrell. Thank you so much for watching Buffalo Plus, presented by Connors and Ferris.